Hi everyone and welcome to another video. I see that the lighting is a bit in your face suddenly, the sun is out. Anyway, hi, I'm Noraan and today we're going to do a tag, the Backlisted Books tag, which was created by my friend Paula from Draw Your Books. So what Paula did is that she wants to draw a little bit more attention to backlisted books because we don't always have to either read classics or books that have just come out. So first of all, she did a series where she recommended books for each decade, which added a lot of books to my TBR. I'll link that down below. And then she made a tag to make us talk about books that are backlist that we either have read or would want to read. And I'm going to answer those questions today. So the first question is, do you read backlisted books and why? I do read backlisted books, but I have to admit it's not something that I concentrate on, and it's not even something that I'm very much aware of. I do have a vague idea in my head of authors that I want to read the backlist of, but I don't do that very often, and I'm not very aware oftentimes of the books that I read, whether they are backlisted or not. And that actually brings us to the second question, namely, what is a backlisted book for you? So, on the one hand, to me, I feel that books that are written before 1950-ish, although in my head 1950 is 50 years ago and I know that it's 70. Anyway, books written prior to 1950 are classics. If we still talk about them by now, they're classics. Whether you call that modern or actual classics, I don't really care. And then I would say that books that have been written in the past 10 years are still too modern to nowadays. So somewhere, I'd say the backlisted books are books that are written between 1950 and, let's say, 2010. And I also think that backlisted book is often a book that an author has written previous to the last book that they have written. So it's a very loose definition. Let's go to the questions about the actual books. The first one being, name a backlisted book that you love. So I grabbed a lot of books and let's just go through the list. The first book that I want to talk about is The Bastard of Istanbul by Elif Shafaq. It's the first Elif Shafaq, I've only read two, that I read, and I really liked it. I really fell in love with the way that she describes in this book Istanbul and a family. It talks about a family where a young woman is raised by her mother and her two sisters. So really this matriarchal family. There is a little bit of tension in this family because the brother of those three aunts is going to come back to Istanbul. He went to the US. So this brings a lot of tension in this family. And I really liked, like I said, how Istanbul is portrayed. It really made me want to go there. And I really like this family tension. I often like family dramas, and this was that for me. So I really like this, and it really made me want to read more Elif Shafaq. Another one that I loved is The Book of Night Women by Marlon James. I read this years ago already with my book club. It's my first Marlon James, and I really liked also the writing in this because it is very dark. So this book is set in Jamaica at a time where there was still slavery, and there is a young girl who is a house slave, and there is something dark and mystical, mysterious about her. People feel that, or the people that are around, and there is a group of night women who meet up in a cave, and they kind of invite her as well to their meetings and to talk about the plans that they have. And it was the first book, I think, that I read that really introduced more of what slavery is. It was kind of this is a harsh book to read. There are horrific stuff that happens in here. A couple of people also in my book did not finish it because of that. But I liked the rawness of it, and I would recommend it for that. The third backlisted book that I want to talk about, and that I don't have, that I'm planning on someday owning, is Train to Pakistan by Kushwant Singh. This is a book that I read last year as part of a read-along organized by Jyotsna from Jyotsna's Bookscapades, and I really love the book. It's set at the time of the partition, just when some people have to go to Pakistan and other people have to move to India, and it's about this village where the three communities So the Muslims, the Sikhs, and the Hindus lived in perfect harmony, but then the partition happens and this stress suddenly comes upon them, and neighbor turns, it's not turns to, it turns on neighbor and stuff like that. And I loved the evolution in the book. I thought also for me it was a good introduction to the partition, because the partition is such a complex subject, but in this book it is still very plot based, so it was, like I said, it was a good introduction. And there is the story of this young man who has a love story with a young woman that also plays a central part in the book. Wonderful, would absolutely recommend it. Let's go to the next question, and that is, name a backlisted non-fiction book. Now, when I was reading in my data what kind of books I read, came to the conclusion that prior to, I think 2 years ago, I wasn't really reading a lot of non-fiction, so I only have one book for this question, and that is Au nom du Japon, or in English, No Surrender by Hiro Onada. This book is about the Japanese soldier who during the Second World War was sent to an island and sent to defend it, and stayed on that island for decades and decades and decades. And in this book he talks about his life on that island, how he was sent to it, why he never believed any of the messages about the war has been over for 20 years. It is fascinating. There are some parts that I thought were a little bit slow, but you really get into the head of someone who believes something that I find preposterous. And it makes you realize that everybody can believe something that is in fact not true. I mean, if your head just has decided that something is true, you will not... There are so many cases where you will not be... Your opinion on that thing will not be changed. It is a fact for you. So that was very interesting. And the way he survives on this island also was enlightening. So that is Au nom du Japon by Hiro Onada. The next question is, name a translated backlisted book that you love. Now for translated, I understood books that are not originally written in English. One of my favorite books for that is by Vercors, the French author Vercors, called Le Silence de la Mer, that I apparently forgot to grab the book when I was grabbing all of the books. But it is a very small book that just punched me right through the heart. It's set in the Second World War. There is this very small village, French village, and the German soldiers are assigned to homes, and the woman that we follow lives with her father. They have a very quiet life, and this German soldier is sent to live with them and to live in the room of, I can't really remember if it's either the dead mother or the brother or something like that. And they decide that they are not going to talk to him. And this man, he is very respectable. He does not necessarily believe in the war. He's someone that likes art, and that he's not a war person. So he just comes every night. He goes downstairs to talk to them, and they are quiet. And the tension in the book is phenomenal. And there is also this she's very conflicted because she hates him, but at the same time she's very interested, and I don't know, the way it was written was phenomenal. I really, really loved it. Then we have the Nashov family trilogy by Anna B. Ragden, who is a Norwegian author. So in this trilogy, it's a family drama, and I really, really love those. So we follow a family that, like the primary core of the family, the man and his mother, they live on a farm, a pig's farm, which I love reading about, and they have, first of all, they have a complicated relationship with one another, and they also have a complicated relationship with the two brothers of that man. And then there is also a young woman who is, I think, the daughter of that man, or the daughter of one of the uncles, also comes into play. And they come into play because the mother has passed away, and all of these things are dredged up about the past. There isn't a lot happening in the book per se, but all of these conflicts and all of the things that happen under the revelations that are made, I remember really loving at the time. It is one of those books that I should read again, because my reading taste have evolved so much in the last 5 years that I have no idea if now I would still love it. But I would still I mean, I remember that for a family drama it was really good. So the other translated book that I want to talk about is The Reader by Bernard Schling. This was also made into a movie that stars Kate Winslet. Anyway, so this book is also set in the Second World War, and it is about this relationship between this, I don't know, woman, I think she's in her 40s or something, and a young man. And at the beginning of the book, they meet and they start to have this physical relationship. He is 16, and they don't only have this relationship that is about sex. Is it only about sex? Well, no, not only, because one of the things that they do is that he also reads books to her. As you can imagine, this relationship is difficult because there are a lot of things that set them apart. One of them obviously being the age difference, but he's also a very bright young man who is going to go study, etc. And she is just a tram conductress or something, not conductor, the person that checks tickets. So they have a lot that sets them apart, and obviously also there is a lot of secrecy going on. And then years later, they meet again. Well, they don't really meet, but he is studying law and he goes to this hearing that is about something that happened during the Second World War concerning a group of Gestapo agents, all women, who there is an incident surrounding them and some women in Auschwitz. And he recognizes her. And the thing that I love about this book is that it told me, first of all, I really liked how he, as a young man, the theme about how he looks at his elders, the people that in his eyes were quiet during the Second World War, and the anger that you can feel there. I thought that was very interesting. I mean, and I also liked that it's not only about his parents not doing anything, but it's also about who is responsible. So yeah, really like this one. Obviously the book is better than the movie. The next questions are about authors. The first, well, so we're at the 6th question, I believe, is name an author that you have read all the backlist from. There is only one, and that is Khaled Hosseini. So I've read The Kite Runner, From the Mountain Comes the Echo, and The Thousand Splendid Suns. And I've also read the book that was more like poetry with a lot of drawings that I've kind of got the name from, but I think this is the only author that I've actually read all of the backlist from that I want to read. There are other authors that I'm kind of on the way, one being Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in my next wrap-up because I have recently finished half of A Yellow Sun, and I will also treat my feelings about Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie in that video. But for now, let's just say that I've read these three, so Purple Hibiscus, Americana, and Half of the Yellow Sun, and also Why We Should All Be Feminists. And that would leave me with the short story collection, That Thing Around Your Neck, and I think she's also written another essay thing. But more about that in my next video. Another author that I have read a lot from is Bernard Werber. I've mentioned him a couple of times. He's an author that I read when I was younger and now is not at all my taste anymore, but I do still like to mention it because I still own 17 books of his. I mean, I can't just shove that away. So yeah, I've read a lot of his books. I think the last book of his that I read is Demain les Chats, which came out maybe 3 years ago. And also on this list, I have also read quite a lot of books from Anna Enquist. She's a Dutch author. This is the only book of hers I own. This is her face. This is what she looks like. I don't know how many books of her, I think at least 4 or 5. And I kind of binged a lot of her books in a period a few years ago. And all of her books are kind of about this music, but also children being lost. So parents losing their children either to, I don't know, some kind of disease or something like that. So after having read like 4 or 5, I was like, okay, this is starting to get heavy, I get it now. But yeah, I also read quite a lot of her books. Don't think I'm going to read more, to be honest, which is why I'm treating her now, because the next question is authors that you would like to read all of the backlist from. So one is an author that I already mentioned, and that is Marlon James. I have already read Black Leopard, Red Wolf, also, as well as The Book of Night Women. And the next one that I want to read is A Brief History of 7 Killings. I've had this on my shelf already for I think a year. I started audiobooking it last year, but quickly came to the realization that it was too heavy for an audiobook. But this, I think, it's not a small book. It's got about 600 pages, and I know the materials in this, the book itself is quite heavy, but yeah, I still really want to get to this. I also want to slowly make my way through all of Kazuo Ishiguro's novels. I have currently read Never Let Me Go, that I have here, The Remains of the Day and The Buried Giant, and I want to keep Clara and the Sun for somewhat later. And luckily for me, Amalia from Amalia Reads just gave me a couple of recommendations, so I have a list somewhere of which ones are the next two that I want to read. But yeah, I want to slowly make my way through Kazuo Ishiguro's work. Then we also have Diane Satterfield. I really like her style because she writes in this very gothic-y style, and I'm really sucked in. I've read Once Upon a River by her and The 13th Tale, and that kind of leaves me with her third book, which is Bellman and Black, a ghost story, and I know she also wrote a short story. So yeah, I have those two also that I would want to read, so there's Diane Satterfield. I also want to make my way through Elif Shafaq's work a little bit more. Besides The Bastard of Istanbul, I've read Architect's Apprentice, and the next one that I would want to pick up, but I've been wanting to pick up for at least 2 years, is The Three Daughters of Eve. But if you have recommendations about Elif Shafaq, please. Then we also have the Guadeloupean author Marie Scondé. I discovered her last year, and I actually have quite a lot of her books. I mean, I have already read Moitié du Bel Sorcière. I am currently reading, although it's not really working with my reading slump, her book Ségou, and I also have Ma vie scélérate by her. I like her voice. I like how kind of historically accurate or historically based her books are, but I really just need to continue with Ségou before I can really say more about whether I'm really going to like her. I don't really know why I already have 3 books. I already had 3 books by her before having read one, and that just does not make sense to me. The last question is, name a backlisted book that you think will become a classic. So first of all, for that I have Wizard of the Crow by Ngugi Watiungo. He is a Kenyan author, and this book is just brilliant. There is something about the way it's layered and the way it's written that it really has classics potential, in a way that a lot of the books that I just mentioned feel a little bit too contemporary, and I really wonder whether in 50 years time we'll still love them. I mean, do I just love them because they hit me, or are they also books that are good for the wider public that you want for a classic? But this one, definitely. I also think The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro will definitely make that list. I don't know about his other books. Never Let Me Go, maybe, but I'm not sure. But definitely The Remains of the Day. And I also wish that Marie Scondé would get there, so wait, let me grab it. Marie Scondé was this one. But she's not very well known, but I do think that the books have that quality because there is this depth that you want a book that will become a classic to have. So that's Marie Scondé. And that brings us to the end of this tag. I am going to tag a couple of people because I want this tag and the idea of reading backlisted books to grow a little bit more. So Laura from Laura Reads Pages, I would love it if you did this tag, as well as Tokyo Chemist. Let me know if you've read any of these books, if there are any books that you would recommend based on what you just heard, or if you did this tag, please also let me know. Okay, thanks for watching. See you in another video. Bye.